in the Punjab. Right. Sorry, just a message came up about recording from just out of it. I just blocked everybody else out. And so, yeah, just to Northwest India, the Punjab, I was brought up in a Sikh family. So one of the things I had to do was not to have my hair cut. So I used to have very sort of long hair and tied up in a little, my mum used to sort of tie it up for me. But I came to Birmingham at the age of 9, and just before coming over, because my dad felt that there has been some form of racism and things that they and his two brothers encountered there in the West Midlands. And so, and also for a number of other reasons, he thought it would be best for me not to wear a turban in the future. That was one of the reasons. So I just remember being taken to this particular temple in India, where the first lot of hair is sort of dedicated and cut. So it's all shaved off, probably became the first skinhead in India. And so after which I could grow it, do whatever I wanted and stuff like that. So I just remember coming to the UK without any hair, really, just a bald sort of guy, sort of, and I think it was around about sort of June sort of time, coming from a very hot climate to somewhere, and I'm not exaggerating or saying anything, but pouring down with rain at Heathrow Airport, being picked up and taken to Birmingham. It was quite a culture shock at that time. As I say, I couldn't speak any English, and so just started going there. I had never in my life ever heard about Christianity or the Bible or anything else, nor was there anybody in our family or extended family connected to the church. But just to say, on this particular road that we used to live on, there was a little church, a little sort of Brethren Gospel Hall sort of place at the top of the road. And we would just play football out there every night. And the front of this church was just perfect for the goals. You know, we would just sort of, that was it. The brethren had thought about this, you know, and they said that we want to attract the kids and this is how we're going to do it. So as kids, we used to just go there. And then in my sort of teens, they decided to open these doors. We couldn't play there any longer. We had to go in, and there were lots of quizzes and stories and things that they were telling. And our parents allowed us to go mainly because they encouraged us to integrate and to learn more about the culture, learn more about the language and other religions as well. And Sikhism is one of those faiths which is very inclusive, that it's sort of, if you were to go, say, for example, I'm probably jumping ahead, but into a Gurdwara, and on behalf of Edinburgh City Mission, you were able to say, here's a gift. We would like to present you with a book or something about our own journey and story here in Edinburgh. They would take it, they would appreciate it, would be kind, and they would store it there. So they wouldn't say no to anything which is of any other faith. So very inclusive. So wanting to go to this church, and so and it was there that, as I say, the first time I really began to hear about Christianity. I still went to the Gurdwara, and a little silly joke, if I may, and then I'll hand back over to you. It is quite biblical because Jesus said that, you know, you can be a Sikh first and then sort of integrate your faith, because he said seek ye first, you see. So there you go. That's my little joke. So anyway, Maria, it's not a joke, it's all right. They get worse.
Thank you for sharing that. So you already told us, like, the next question we normally ask is, how did you enter this culture? But you already told us, and yesterday you said you wanted to talk a little bit about culture in general as a concept. So
yeah, I think when we're looking at other communities and people of other particular faiths, and whether that's in terms of people from, you know, whether they're from Syria or Sudan, or whether they're from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Punjab, or wherever it might be, we need to, I think, sometimes understand that there are obviously different cultures and people do things in a different way to the way we do them. it doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just different, but also to understand that there is a difference between faith and culture sometimes. So take an example like, I just remember one time I took this group of people, these students, into the Gurdwara in Birmingham for them just to learn a bit more about and to connect in there. And one of the students said, I'm not taking my shoes off. He said, I'm going to just stand out here. I'm not going in. I'm a Christian and I'm not taking my shoes off. And I said to him, so what are you going to do when you go into a church in India where they take their shoes off? And he said, what do you mean? I said, if you were to go to most of the churches in India, you'd have to take your shoes off because it's a cultural thing. If you walked into an Indian home or a Pakistani or a South Asian home, you'd have to take your shoes off. And he didn't understand the difference between faith and culture. So sometimes we need to just be aware, why are people doing what they're doing? Is it because of their faith or is it because of their culture? So whether you're going to a mosque, into a mandir, or you take your shoes off because it's a South Asian cultural thing that they do in the home as well. Take, for example, like arranged marriages or assisted marriages. I'm against forced marriages, but that again, it's a cultural thing. Some people think, oh, look at these sort of, Hindus or Muslims, Sikhs, this arranged marriage kind of thing. And they put it to that it's prescribed somehow within their faith, and it's not. It is a cultural thing. It is within Sikhism. It existed before then. So a lot of the things, and I've been to a number of Asian weddings, and if you've been there, especially Punjabi weddings, you'll see just somehow the Punjabis, just to say, are the Glaswegians of North India. So if you think of Glaswegians, you think of Punjabis and the way that they like to party and do things, really, which has got nothing to do with their Sikh faith, what they do. It's the same as, say, weddings that take place here in Scotland, even Christian weddings and others. There's nothing in there where it says you can dance or you can't dance, whether you can have wine or not have wine, and so forth. It's very much up to the family and that particular sort of group that they associate themselves with. So I think it's just understanding that there is a difference and actually understand. And I think the way that I would say that is always ask questions. Just ask the person a question about it, really, without making assumptions. I think people sometimes do make assumptions. I was just having to go into the Western Hospital, and I was talking to one of the nurses, and I said to her, isn't it a beautiful day, sunny, glorious day? And she said, yes, I think we might well have an Indian summer. And this is 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And she said, that's what we call here in this country in the autumn when it's like summer. And she assumed that I had no idea what an Indian summer was. And sometimes we talk to people as they know nothing. And I have a friend, some of you might have met her, called Trishna. She heads up Sikh Sanjog here in Edinburgh. And she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. And when you talk to her, and sometimes people say, do you go back home? And for her, her home is Glasgow. Although when you see her, she's dressed like a Punjabi woman, and you see her, but she's never ever, to my knowledge, or she might have been now, but her parents, when in 1947, when the partition took place between India and Pakistan, another brilliant idea by the British at the time. So a lot of people then came to, some went to places like Kenya and so to Africa, and others came here to the UK. So she was actually born in Glasgow. And her accent and everything else, she's Glaswegian. And so I think you could just make these sort of assumptions about people's different cultures and where they're from without actually making assumptions, without actually asking questions. So I think we just need to be aware of those things, and maybe we'll open it up for questions later on.
Yeah, thank you. We were chatting yesterday, and I thought it was a very, very useful distinction, because we are talking about faith and culture, and sometimes we assume the Scottish culture is just like representing Christianity, when even here there are so many nuances, and there might be people from different parts of the world with the same faith, a different culture, and there might be clashes there, but not in their faith, but it's complicated. So thank you for that, Pal. So the next question is, personally, if you have ever experienced discrimination or racism?
I think the first time I faced it sort of blunt, you know, so directly was actually sadly from in a Christian church. It was at the time when in my late teens, when I actually was on that journey between Sikhism and Christianity, and just exploring both. And my family were wanting me to get married, and so it was and they were trying to arrange it with the rest of the family. And I just remember going down to London with them, and we'd been to this wedding and everything, and then we went back to somebody's house at the end, and I've never met these people before, but I thought my two uncles were there, and my one of my cousins, and also and my dad as well. But anyway, this was the sort of setting, and then we just, she was giving out samosas and cups of tea, this particular young lady with the others. And then as we were coming back up the motorway, my dad said, you know, what did you think of the girl that was serving you these samosas and chai and stuff, kind of thing? And I said, well, I don't know what he wants me to say, really. 9 out of 10 for a what, you see. I just said, why do you ask? And he said, well, we were talking to the family, and we feel this is the person, you know, for you to be engaged to and get married to. And we wanted you to see her and see what you thought. And I said to him, it's not that I didn't want to get married. It's I do, but it's to the right person. And because I'm on this journey, and I felt really that that person needed to understand something of the Christian faith as well, they still insisted and wanted to go ahead. So I, for a short while, moved to North Devon, to a place called Ilfracombe, and was working in a Christian sort of a hotel guest house there just for the summer. And if you know anything about the Christian denominations and brethren and so forth, they give you a letter to take to your other sort of gospel hall, which can, you know, sort of recommends you can, and so you give it there to them and say you can sort of take communion. So I remember going there, and after being there for about 2 or 3 weeks, they said, you know, you're the only Asian here, the only sort of, as they say, colored person here. But you don't have to worry about anything here. Just there's just one person who's a member of the National Front. He's one of the elders, and but they couldn't see anything wrong. They never challenged it or anything like that. He said, we would appreciate that you didn't talk to him because he's got these racist views and things, really, or he's got these views about immigration and other things and stuff like that. So I think that was so blunt, and that it was never even sort of seen as something that there was anything wrong with it. For them, I think it was still that era that this is a Christian country, and that equated in a sense to white people or becoming somebody like that. So he was saying, you're all right, but not the rest of anybody else of your skin, but you're okay because, yeah, you know, you're a part of the Brethren Church as such. So I think that was the first sort of time in that way that I faced it, really. And I did then decide to go to 1 or 2 of the other sort of churches in town, explore.
Sorry. And when you moved to Scotland. Did you notice any differences, like in the church setting for you as a man from a Sikh background?
I think it's been quite a journey before moving. I've been here in Edinburgh almost 7 years, but it was quite a journey in terms of then being came back to live in Solihull near Birmingham and worked there, and then as a part of a church there, and I think for me that journey, Maria, has been very much in terms of discovering in terms of both cultures, what is the best in both, that I have a left hand and I have a right hand. It's not either or, it's both. And I think in understanding different cultures and communities that are here, it's understanding both of them, that it's not either or, they've got to be one or the other. And one of the people that really helped me to do that, that I did some research on in India, was a Christian called Sadhu Sundar Singh. He was an amazing man. It's reckoned that when he was a contemporary to Mahatma Gandhi, and that when he died, that there were more people who turned out for a day of mourning in India from Sadhu Sundar Singh than Mahatma Gandhi. He was an amazing man, but he was a follower of Christ and Yesu. But one of the things that he did was he never let go of his identity. And what he was saying was, he said, the water of life is for the whole of humanity, and they can drink it. But what we've done is we've tried to force them to drink it from one particular cup and say, this is the way you experience it. You have to drink it in this particular Western cup. So we've McDonaldized in a sense. He didn't say McDonaldized because McDonald's, I don't think, were around, and say, this is how you do it. And he was saying, you know, in India won't drink this cup of water of this life that God offers, because you're putting it in the wrong cup for them. And so he walked around with his turban on, just like any other sadhu, religious, holy man, and walked. And so if he was to come, you know, to a place at the table that we have, he would be dressed completely different. Are we prepared to accept people who are different? He may not want a knife and fork. He'll sit there eating with his hand. He may not want the same food as you. He may bring something else to share with you, and you share his, and vice versa. And it's understanding that, and somebody like that, in terms of, say, faith and culture and different issues maybe that we face, can bring a completely different perspective altogether, really. I think there's been, I know I'm mixing it all up, but just to say, what's been my experience, I can talk more about other people that I've worked with and others, and this was down in London. There was a Muslim lady who was, again, on that sort of journey, and dressed very much as somebody who's from that particular culture. And she was in a church, and she actually got baptized, quite an evangelical sort of church. And as she came out the water, the minister, the pastor, then prayed for her. And he concluded his prayer by saying, and Lord, we pray that she'll stop wearing those funny clothes from now on. And there was silence, really. And you might be saying, thinking, because to him, being somebody who was a Christian, somebody who sort of had to adapt, not just in terms of their faith, in terms of who their journey and the way that they do it. I haven't got time, or I could have shown you a video of some good friends of mine, which are a Radna, and they spent a lot of time in India, and they do these bhajans to Christ. They're missionary kids who grew up there, in Nepal and in other parts of India and played sitar and drums and stuff. And they've done one of the videos, which is Water of Life and stuff and River at Varanasi, and lighting the candles. And there's this man who walks down there, and he fetches the water and everything else. But he dresses and looks just like anybody else that's there. And, you know, but he's a follower of Yesu. He speaks in Hindi. He worships in Hindi. He gets up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. He goes through his rituals in the same way as he goes down to the Ganges. And it's adapting it. So it's actually understanding those cultures and actually saying, you know, it's, you know, that Christ accepts that person just as they are. He loves them as they are. And so I think my experience has been, one of the places I think I went to, somebody said to me, I was giving a talk, and they said, so how often do you go home? And I said, every day. I go home every day. And to them, it was like, how often do I go back? I do go back to India from time to time, but I wouldn't call it home. And I think we need to understand the new emerging communities and those that have been here for a while. This is home for them. This is where they belong. They're a part of the Scottish sort of society and a part of Edinburgh and the life of Edinburgh and the future of it, really, which I can talk a bit more about later if you want me to. But I think it's that sort of place. And I don't think, you know, my experience has been good. And again, it's not a knock, but Jim Wallace said about America that the most racist place in America to live. I wonder if you can guess where the most racist place in America is to live. And you might be thinking somewhere like, you know, California or New York. He wasn't thinking those terms. He was thinking in terms of people. And he said from their studies and what people experience, that the most racist place in America to live was next door to a born-again Christian. And so you say, what a reputation to have in America. And I think, you know, sometimes it's people needing to face it to be able to do it. And also, I think for us, not to go down that particular road and be exclusive in that way. And the way that we do that is to be inclusive in what we're doing, to see that somebody from a different group or culture, from another faith, can actually bring a completely different dimension, help us to think outside the box within our own organizations, whether it's Bethany or whether it's building bridges or whether it's Edinburgh City Mission, whoever it might be, that this table is open and it's not our table, not exclusively ours. It belongs to everybody, and they can help to sort of shape it in the future as well. I talk too much, sorry, Maria.
No, it's fine, because you were going through the questions because you knew what they were. So I think the last thing to ask is about like your vision for the city that you wanted to share. So just, yeah, go ahead.
I think I've touched a bit on it, but what I was going to say was that one of the sort of stories or pictures that I use is that, you know, you can go into some of the places, or now in supermarkets and places, or you can make your own, which are smoothies. So you get some oranges and apples and bananas and pears and whatever fruit you enjoy, and you liquidize it, and then you can drink it or store it or whatever. But you lose the distinction in terms of different fruits that are there. Or you can have a fruit salad, and you can have pineapples, you can have oranges, you can have bananas, you can have strawberries, grapes, whatever. But in that fruit salad, you can see the various distinctions, but it's still in the one. And I think what I would like to see in the church and in the community and in Edinburgh is that vision of a fruit salad, where there is a contribution that somebody from another community, where it's a Sudanese community, Syrian community, Sikh community, Punjab, is bringing a different flavor to it and sharing it, and that we're able to sort of experience that. I think what's happened in the past is that sometimes we've ended up, or certainly when I was down south in England, and the government had sort of very much promoted something in terms of multiculturalism. Now, there isn't anything wrong with it, but what you can do is you can just end up with different bowls of fruit salad. So you actually just have just exclusively bananas in one, oranges, pineapples in one, strawberries in the other, grapes in the other. And you say, aren't they wonderful? Isn't that great taste? Wonderful. But they're all separate. And so what we can end up in Edinburgh is with parallel communities, side by side, never actually integrating. And so with building bridges, what we're about is integration. We're talking more about interculturalism, how those different flavors can come together, and doing projects and doing stuff together to bring people about, really. So it's looking at those communities. So some of you are already working in and saying, so what will they look like in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years? How will they integrate? Because there's a fusion that takes place. So you take, for example, from my sort of background and the Punjabi Sikh background, there's a fusion in terms of music. So you have Punjabi music, which is mixed with Scottish music as well, and bagpipes and everything else. So now the average Punjabi wedding reception will have bagpipes as they walk in. There's bagpipes, there's dolls and so forth, and they fuse this. So it's seeing how that those communities, whether it's a Polish community or whatever, don't get isolated, but that they integrate and work alongside others. And maybe there are projects and things that they can do together as well and co-produce. And so what will that integration in the future look like in terms of those building bridges? And I think for us, you know, those who are engaged in this area of work and looking at those community, it's an exciting time because you can actually help to shape that. You can actually help to facilitate it in a positive way, and show something of unconditional love and help to shape something of the future of Edinburgh. And it might just be a small bit, but it's been, and I know some of you already are with some of the groups, say, for example, on Saturday that you were involved in, that Natalia told me about, which is great. But there are other communities and others that are there. And it is actually taking away this sort of them and us, but seeing that they're a part of the whole, including the Scottish communities that we want to celebrate. So it's not just celebrating and sort of doing something where it's to do with Diwali but it's also, you know, a fusion of a Burns night. What would a Sudanese and a Scottish Burns night look like? Quite exciting. So, you know, what about the musicians in those communities as they come together with other musicians, maybe not just Scottish, but from another culture? So there can be new sounds and music which has never been heard before in Edinburgh that can be created. There can be new churches that can be created that have never ever been before, which come together as a fusion of those things. So that's a part of my sort of vision in the future.
Thank you. I think it's a beautiful vision. And I feel, as you were saying, we are already seeing some of it in like in a small proportion, but it would be wonderful as more communities come and as we are all more aware of this, to see it growing and being present in every part of Edinburgh, every part of Scotland and the UK. Thank you so much, Paul. I don't know if is there anything else you wanted to share, or shall we open up the floor for questions?
I think sometimes people say, where do I start? Where do I begin? And then we can open it up for questions. I always think of somebody like, you know, the great example is Christ, is Jesus, and the way he approached people, like the woman at the well. And he started by asking her for some water. And he just started with what she had and not what she hasn't got. So start with what people have in those communities, not what they haven't got. What is it? What are their strengths? What is it that we can build on? So I would say be more interested than interesting. Sometimes we think we have to come up with some exciting projects, and isn't everything wonderful? You know, we've got this amazing thing that we're going to do and stuff, and it's all interesting. I think like Jesus was more interested in the woman than saying to her, let me tell you all about me. You know, don't you know who I am? Let me tell you about the story how I fed, you know, 5,000 with just some few loaves and fishes. You should hear this story. Or we're great. I'm wonderful. You should see our church, or you should see what we're doing. And we think that's going to attract people, but no, it's the other way around. It's not how interesting you are, but how interested you are. So it's being interested in them as people, as individuals, their communities, the things that they're going through, the fears that they have. And so start with what they have and build, I would say, on those things. And as you know, it's very much that sort of asset-based approach, and then co-producing something with them, not going away and saying, yeah, that's great. We know now we can put the program together, but saying, hey, would you like to be a part of putting this together with us? And I think part of my vision would be that they're doing it then with other groups and saying, hey, did you know there's another group who thinks about doing this sort of, who are into music? Have you thought about you two different groups getting together or something like that? So sometimes you end up just facilitating it, and it's a lot more hard work than just saying, right, we'll just do a program. And sometimes you do need to take the initiative and sort of do plan and so forth. But I would say, you know, to co-produce those things, and not to be sort of like, you know, we know how to do it. We are it, really, because, you know, yeah, and we've done it before so many times. But maybe there's a different way. You know, sometimes if you go into a meeting and you decide you're not going to sit in the same chair that you used to sit in, you're going to sit somewhere else, you begin to see a different perspective. And sometimes we just need people to tell us to sit somewhere else, to see things as we haven't seen them before.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you so much. Everything you've shared has been really helpful. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. We have 20 minutes left, so plenty of time. Yes, Sabina.
Hi, everyone. Paul, thank you so much for sharing what you did. It's super interesting and really good things to reflect on. I was wondering if you want to share how your family perceived your journey in your engagement with I guess, the Christian faith?
I think we have to understand that I can tell you that it was difficult, hard for me to leave home when I did because of my family and then making that decision. But I think we also have to think how hard it is for them as well. Some of you might understand, say, for example, I'm just taking an extreme sort of case. If you've brought your kids up in the Christian faith and then they suddenly say, actually, Mum, Dad, I've decided to become a Muslim. What would be your reaction? How would you actually deal with something like that? So it was very hard for them, having brought me up in that faith, not in a strict way, but in a very sort of nominal sort of way and within that culture. So at that particular time when I did want to get baptized and I was there with the family, it's just the way that God provides for this in an amazing way. Within that church, there was somebody who'd come back, this couple from India. He was a doctor, and he, in India in particular, in that community, you have God and then you have doctors, so they're highly respected. Yeah, and so this, and the other thing was he spoke. He spoke better Punjabi than I did, really. It was amazing. So he said, I'll come and talk to your family. I'll come and talk to them about the baptism, to your dad and to others. So he came along and had some chai with us and so forth. And I just sat there, this white person, just speaking perfect Punjabi. I couldn't believe it, really. And he was able to sort of just ease them, saying, hasn't gone off the rails. This is it. And he was able to gain some favor, really, with my family. I think it was later on, my mum wasn't too well and wanted to go back to India, and they went. And I then decided to go to Bible college and wanted really to serve God things. So when I did, but it was quite local in Birmingham, and then my family came back and I was with them for a while. And then an aunt of mine had actually come over as well. And she'd actually said, right, my mission in life here and the reason I'm here is to get you married. That's it. Here's a couple of photographs, or you choose somebody, and that's it. And so I then again sadly had to just leave home, and then during that time when I was a youth worker in Birmingham, I then met somebody. I was engaged, and then I did tell them, and they didn't want to know anything because the person was white more than anything else. But at the end of the day, we always sort of pray for, Jesus said, when you go out into the community and as you're working in this community, going back to some of the people, look for a man or a woman or somebody of peace. Start with somebody, with a man or woman of peace. And so I just pray that there would be a peacemaker in our family. And one of my uncles said to my dad and to the rest of them, said, I'm going to the wedding, and so's my side of the family going. Some of you already know this kind of thing, but we have the extended family. So the invitation for an Indian wedding, say for example, in the sort of Punjabi sort of Indian, I'm the head of the house because my father has passed away. I'm the oldest. So the invitation comes to me, but the invitation is for my family, which includes my two sisters, my brother, and their kids and me, everybody. It's the whole family. And so, so when he said, my family's coming, that's about 20 of them, 20, 30 of them. So then my other uncle said, yes, I'll come along, and then the others. And so by the end, I think there's about 80 or 90 of them, just the sort of 2 or 3 days before and trying to arrange food and stuff like that. So, and we tried to fuse it with sort of Bhangra dances and music and stuff like that. And my dad was really still not happy about it until my son was born, our first son. So it was at that particular time, I think, the family began. We then started something in Birmingham called Sanctuary, which is very much a fusion, sort of starting with where people are at, and in a very sort of East-West sort of cultural sort of way. And through that, and before that, my two sisters, you know, were a part of it as well, and their daughter, and it's her birthday today, Sonia, who's 27, and Sonia is an amazing, but she grew up in Sanctuary, and she's got this sort of dual thing in terms of her culture and so forth. And the reason I mention her is that it gave her space and just to do poems and all kinds of things, and to be just baptized more in the sort of Anglican sort of way, because it was linked to an organization called Fresh Expressions and CMS and stuff. So yeah, so the family a lot more, and I think I then, by doing that, sort of pioneered something, because that uncle, his daughter later on got married to a white guy from Newcastle. And then Sonia got married 3 years ago in Dundee, from partly Scottish, but he's also from Newcastle, but the family all live in. So sometimes when you do something and you take the first step and you have to sort of do it kind of thing, and it's courageous, you pioneer something different and something new for others to follow in the days to come.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we can have one more. Two.
Are there any parts of Indian culture, especially like Punjabi culture, that you think would be helpful sort of in Western white Christian culture? Sort of, as you're saying, like the guy who prays before he goes down the Ganges and stuff like that, any sort of spiritual practices that we could learn from Punjabi culture?
I think we have to be open, and I think Paul talks about in one of his writings, or one of his epistles, talks about add to your faith. So it's those things that we can add and be a part of it that cross over. And one of the things I think that as Christians that we can learn is this whole concept of savor within the Punjabi Sikh culture, which is to do with service and hospitality. And it is amazing that some of you have been to things like, I don't know, down south it's Greenbelt or some of the other sort of events and things. If that was a Sikh event, everybody would be fed in the morning, lunchtime and evening, everyone. You wouldn't have to bring your food. So it's totally sort of alien. There's a thing that Punjabi Christians do in Oxford. It's the Oxford Convention that takes place. And you go there and there's about 1,000, 1,500 people or so. And they're all Punjabis, dressed as Punjabis, everybody's speaking Punjabi. And nobody's brought their food along. Nobody's told, you know, go down to Greg's or somewhere and get your sandwiches and stuff like that. It's a whole different sort of concept. And so when you go to the Gurdwara, when it's open, like on a Sunday morning, it's very much a fluid. You go in, you pray, you can leave. But downstairs is the langar where you get some a vegetarian meal. But in that, everyone's a volunteer. It's like we ask for volunteers. In the Gurdwara, everybody's a volunteer. You know, there's no exclusion. So they'll help with the cooking, they'll help with the serving, different ones. Some will wash up, some will go and serve the food, some will go and collect it different ways. So they're all involved. I think there's something there that we can learn from that culture about savor and service. And you know, I'm not saying it's all brilliant and everything in any way, but this whole thing about family as well that I mentioned, that what does it really mean to be that extended family, and how we can help and support one another during those sort of times. So yeah, I think, you know, the heart of it really there is this, as Christ said, you know, he who's the greatest amongst you must become the servant of all, and just being a servant really in that sort of situation. So I'm not saying that suddenly you do it, but I'm saying in a cultural sort of setting, that's how it will be. We're hoping to do some, hopefully do some events and things, intercultural ones at Santosa in Leith, and but the food will be there. There's a Punjabi lady who does most of the cooking there, and she'll do a buffet. We're not expecting anybody to pay. We're not expecting anybody to sort of bring their own food or buy their own food. And so it's those sort of things that you learn really from within that culture. The other thing you can, John, learn is how to make curries. And we also do that as well, building bridges online. Christy will tell you.
Well, Christy.
Oh no, I was just going to back him up and say Paul did an amazing workshop for our International Student Cafe. It was very, very patiently done. Some people were way behind when he got to certain steps and everything, but we did chicken curry, and I think chickpea curry, was it, Paul?
Yeah, there was chickens with spinach and mushrooms, and I think we did, the other one was it okra and tomato? Yeah. And I think we did it, Colin, with St. James's as well.
Natalia, you
want? Yeah, just Pall, I just wanted to encourage you because I love your vision for Edinburgh. And yeah, thank you for sharing your passion of bringing people together. Yeah, I wrote so many things that I'm gonna keep and treasure, the showing unconditional love and being interested in people instead of seeming interesting. And yeah, so thank you very much. I have gone to a couple of the Building Bridges events and have been definitely highlights. So just an encouragement and blessing on you, because you are doing really good work, and it's so exciting to see this calling in your life and how it's showing in your work on it. So keep on going.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. One of the things just to say is that in the new year, we're hoping to do some cultural awareness training as well. And some of that will be for churches and Christian organizations, how we can build bridges instead of barriers. And that will include, say, something about those different faith communities in terms of the cultural side, but also the religious side. So what does a Sikh actually believe, and some, you know, who are the gurus and so forth, and what happens in the Gurdwara and stuff like that. And the same with the Muslim faith, and then the Sikh faith and the Buddhist faith. And one of the things we'll try and do is also bring in people from those faiths, so that it's not a Christian version of Hinduism or Sikhism or Islam, but it's them speaking and sharing their story, and, you know, telling it, you know, as it is. So it'll be, so we're looking to do that, and some of these things will be done in partnership with others in the city, and also as funding becomes available. So I can't say we're going to do it because our treasurer's here, Colin. So we're not committing ourselves to anything at this point.
I was hoping to do it.
Yeah.
Hoping.
Well, if people want to know more about this, can we share your email if someone asks?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just pal@buildingbridges.scot. So you can email me. And when these things, and also I'm in touch with Duncan quite frequently with some of the other stuff that's going on, and with Open Table as well, and with Natalia with some of the stuff. And I don't know if she's still pop into Jane Street these days or not. So with Bethany. So anyway.
Someday I'll be back. I miss you guys. You guys are great.
And well, just to finish, perhaps I want to echo what Natalia said. Thank you so much for sharing, especially your vision. I think there's loads that we can pray for, and yeah, just joining with you in that vision too, which I believe it's very much aligned with the kingdom. Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you, Pal, again for sharing.
Yeah.
Hope you all have a lovely weekend.
And you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pal.
Thanks very much.
So
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Pal. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank you. It was good to be with you guys. Thank you for the invite. Thank you, Maria.
Sorry I was late. I was having to run from a ministry, but really, really appreciated it.
Thank you.
Really good.
So yeah, thank you. See
Great.
you soon.